It's 10 a.m. Let's call the meeting to order. Anybody doesn't look like we have anybody to ask any questions, correct? Okay. First thing that we have to discuss is policy 005 organization. I have some questions on this. I don't know where all we're gonna go with it, but why was it brought up?
Oh, this,
That was yours.
yes.
Okay. I'm trying to remember.
No, I realize
I'm
it's,
old. I'm the oldest one in the room. That's scary.
and if I remember it incorrectly, please correct me. Anybody? The situation arose when we were in a committee meeting and the board president voted during a committee meeting, and that was news to me. And I guess it was news to most folks. So we've been discussing whether or not to remove the voting rights for the president by changing ex officio to ad hoc, or just eliminating it altogether. And so at the last meeting, I was requested to contact PSBA to get their input. And I did, Chris got it, Tracy Smith got it. And basically it said, and if anyone wants a copy, it's up to the school board whether or not they want to keep it. They said assigning both the president and the superintendent as ex officio, assigning either the board president or the superintendent as ex officio, schools choosing neither option. In other words, not addressing the ex officio issue at all. So, of course, and he wrote as a qualifier that it needs if we do change it, I'm sorry, if we recommend for a change, of course, it has to go to the full board, and a majority of the board would have to vote on it. And he also recommends, quote, should involve the guidance of your local solicitor. And then I think Tracy Smith had the question of, you know, or maybe it was you, Chris, I'm sorry, I don't remember, but if PSBA could give us an idea on how many, or a rough idea on how other Pennsylvania school districts handle this one line. And they said, you know, they don't have that information. And I mean, someone could sit there and do a mega search on board docs for days and read every policy out there from every school district in Pennsylvania. But is that really where we want to go? So that's where they left it. Basically, it's up to us to make a recommendation, change it, don't change it. And if we do want to change it, what would the change be? And then it would go to the full board for their consideration.
I don't feel there needs to be a change at all. The only quote unquote vote that there was for the chairperson of the committee. And basically the president has the authority to step in there if there's a tie and make that decision. That's their decision. There's nothing else that's voted on within committees because we're not allowed to vote within committees. There's no reason to change it.
Everything I kind of looked at and read on that, it states in our own policies under committees that the standing committees are comprised of no more than 3 board members, so we won't have a tie. But if somebody's not there, then the president can step in and do a vote. That's the way I kind of read everything.
But there's no votes.
Right.
So it's more consensus of what does the committee want to bring to the full board and
Exactly.
what don't they? So I mean, if it ends in a, you know, two
In a
people,
tie, he's
one
the
person says
tiebreaker.
yes, one person says no, then it should just go to the full board, just as a board thing. If the president, or, you know, the president can say yes, no, as the third person, but I don't think there's any reason. And I looked at our surrounding school districts and they all have in there, some of them actually have both superintendent and president
Mhm.
Right.
in their
That's what-
policy. So the surrounding ones have the exact same thing we do.
Yeah, because if we have three and somebody else steps in, that's four, then you could have a tie situation. So I think go to the entire board for
Yeah.
the answer on that.
If
And-
if
mhm.
it's that much of a big deal, it should come to the full board anyway.
Yeah,
Right.
and I like that idea, Tracy, and with the idea though, that maybe that's the extra sentence or grammar we add is that if a vote is tie, the president,
Again, there's no vote. There's nothing to vote on in
but
committee
he did,
meetings.
but the president did vote during a meeting.
That was to appoint the chairperson.
Yes, but it doesn't say that in the policy. That's what I'm saying. It's unclear.
But it
Some-
also says that the board has, the board president, I'm pretty sure already says, has the final
I
say
don't remember what meeting you're talking about.
and can discuss. It was the first or second facilities committee meeting after our
Yeah,
reorganization.
Tom couldn't be there to vote.
Tom couldn't be there,
So,
so Butch was there, Jeff and Elizabeth, and Butch pretty much was the
so
quote
he
unquote
voted in
tiebreaker
Tom's place.
for a chairperson. That's all it was. It had nothing to do with committee business, school business. It was, it was the committee chairperson.
If I may, on the third page of the policy, that last full paragraph, it does say, as you pointed out, Chris, standing committees will be comprised of no more than 3 board members appointed annually at the board organization meeting. And any tie for the chairperson will be decided by the board president or vice president, whoever is not a committee member.
Oh, you're
Right.
right.
Correct.
You're absolutely
You're
correct.
right.
Thanks for catching that. Okay, so the done deal. All right, so
Okay.
that's okay, good. I don't know why I missed that, but that's my fault. Thank you for finding it. Done.
Now, in this reading of this policy, I did come up with one question. Just above the committees, under board committees, the last little short blurb there says, standing committees shall consist of no more than 3 members of the board, except for finance, property, and planning. We don't have a property committee. So should that be replaced with finance facilities? And what's really our planning? That's more of a,
This was just boilerplate language that came from the
Right.
SBA. And so I think they were just trying to cover their bases and that, and for, they just, put down the 3 possible standing committees.
right,
But it's at, at the board's discretion as to what they include in that line.
okay, I caught that and I wanted to ask about it because we don't really have a property
Mhm.
committee.
No, it's all rolled into finance.
I think that's for the acquisition or sale of property.
That's what I was
That should be a
wondering.
full board issue. and not
Okay.
A subcommittee or a committee.
All right, so are we good with
Yes, thank you so
005?
much. Finally.
Okay, let's go to number 2 under discussion policy 012, board superintendent relationship.
So this is a policy that I'm recommending that
Okay,
the board take a look at, starting here with the policy committee. And this is the one that I've used before that kind of defines specifically what that superintendent and board relationship is. And there's this overall policy, but then there's an AR that goes with it that gets a little bit more into the weeds and gives some scenarios, such as what happens when a community member has a question, and then defines a set of things that are board roles and a set of things that are superintendent roles. So that matches up with PSBA and their writing about the board and superintendent.
there's not a 012 policy now, right?
Correct. So this is
Do
the
we
introduction.
truly need one? Because they've gone this long without it.
My hope is to reduce ambiguity about who does what and when things are, when a community member has a question, what they
Right,
should do about it. So it's just for us as a team of 10 to understand what the different roles are between superintendent and board member, and then also to communicate to the community what my role is, what the board's role is, and how we work together.
well, I'm asking because there's been several different things you sent to us from Washington. That thing about that, and then when we had our retreat, you give us something different,
That was the same thing as this.
and now this one's
No,
different.
this is the same thing as that 1620 that I sent.
Okay, the only question I have on this in the second paragraph, it says the superintendent as an officer of the board, and The superintendent would not be an officer of the board. The only officers are president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. You would be the officer of the administration of education.
Yeah, okay, that's an easy,
So that
That's just a
should be,
language
I think
change.
that should
Mhm.
just be changed so that
Sure.
we're within the scope of what it's supposed to
yeah,
be.
absolutely.
Tracy, you have anything else on that?
Nope, I think it's good. Are you gonna add on, you said about, are you gonna add on there specifically? Or is that gonna be in an AR, the superintendent rules, board rules?
Yeah, that's the AR. Mhm. That's, I shared that with you
Yeah.
during the retreat.
The AR, I'd have to remember what it was. I don't remember. Can you give a quick blurb on it?
It was, I'm sorry, I didn't bring that with me. There's several pages to it and it goes, it just goes a little bit further, actually quite a bit further than the overall policy, as ARs often do. And so there's a chart on there, for instance, kind of works through a scenario. If a community member were to come to a board member with a question, then it kind of walks through the steps of what the board member should do to support that community member to get the answers or seek resolution to whatever issue that person brought up.
Okay. I think that's something we should discuss with the whole board so everybody knows what you're asking.
Sure, absolutely.
So maybe we need to bring that up with the whole board at the next work session.
That was
And
my
ask
intent,
about it.
yeah.
Okay.
Yep, I think that's a great idea.
All right, Elizabeth, you have anything on it?
Yes, actually I do. I don't understand what this sentence is trying to express. So I'm requesting that it's be rewritten in layman's terms. Second paragraph, third sentence, starts with unless the specificality limited, the superintendent may delegate to other staff the exercise of any powers and the discharge of any duties imposed by the district policy or a vote of the board. That's a very, for layman's terms, 8th grade English would be really appreciated. So,
Okay, so what that sentence is, there are some things that are written into policy that says superintendent or designee. And so this is just basically saying again that I have the right to designate some roles to
well, maybe
other
that,
folks in the staff.
oh, I think you're on the right track. Maybe just not that this is proper English. Basically, delegation of responsibilities per standards, per adopted policies. Something like that. So it's very, very easy to understand.
Okay, we can look at the rewording of that.
That would be super terrific. And then the third paragraph, second sentence, where it starts, the superintendent shall establish communication procedures, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Start the sentence probably with something like, with final approval from the board, comma, the superintendent shall establish.
Mhm. He has
My-
the
my
right to do
job
any
is-
kind of communication he wants with us. We don't need to approve for him to be. able to have
Yeah,
communication with
that's
us.
almost micromanagement.
Oh, okay, then fine. Okay, because I'm just
Absolute
thinking, okay,
micromanagement.
I
all right,
mean,
I
if-
just want to
if
make sure
we-
that,
If we give him a direction that we want to head to, and he delegates it to Mr. Zangara or Tracy or somebody, that's his right to do that.
oh, so I'm sorry, see, that's how this paragraph is unclear. To me, it's reading that the superintendent will make 100% decisions on all communications and that the school board won't be allowed to communicate with anybody. That's how I'm
I-
reading it.
That's not, I don't believe that's what it says. So
Not
the
at
intent
all.
of that sentence is that I establish ways of communicating with you all as the board, which we've already done. So for instance, the weekly memos and the superintendent reports and all that sort of thing. That's what it's
Okay.
referring to.
What about this? What if we put between the words establish and communication, shall establish school board member and superintendent communication procedures? That would clear up that whole thing.
Okay, it seems like you're saying the same thing twice.
Yeah,
Well, that's,
the way it's written is pretty
Well, if I found it confusing, that means that, someone else might find it confusing.
Well,
So-
the whole purpose of the policy is specifically board superintendent relationships, so board superintendent communication. So the superintendent shall establish communication procedures with the board, basically, which can enhance the board members' understanding of student programs and student operations. That's the whole point of the policy is superintendent
Okay.
board communication. That's.
The only thing I really see is we need to change that officer sentence.
Okay, and then the other one I have is, and now, this is not proper English, but this has been an ongoing situation for multiple years. And I think of all the things that this policy should address is, and I'm gonna just word it, and this isn't proper English, but just so you understand the content. Superintendent shall ensure all school board directors have equal access and knowledge. And then add in somewhere. Superintendent shall not initiate, support, or be involved with school board interpersonal or professional disagreements or conflicts. And that is part of the communication process. And to me, that's a critical component to this.
So part of my role is to work with board members on conflict resolution as it arises or as it's brought to me. So what I'm hearing you say would restrict that part of.
I never knew that was in the legislation, that that's a school superintendent's job to be involved with interpersonal and professional conflicts with board members. In fact, I think it's the complete opposite, is that if a superintendent does become involved, it appears to have created very distinct lines in the board, and that the school board members, it's up to them whether or not they want to get along and communicate with each other. But I think once the superintendent, who's an employee of the school board, becomes involved, that is a conflict of interest, and it puts you, or the superintendent, in a very unwinning situation. So it's to pretty much protect that the superintendent stay out of interpersonal and professional conflicts with the board. Now, if there's something going on during a board meeting and the chair of the committee is, or the president of the committee, of the board is unable to control the board meeting, again, I don't know if it would be appropriate for the superintendent to try to help with that situation. That is a defect in the school board, because we are the governors of the school board. So bottom line, I think it's critically important for communication to ensure that all school board members at all times have equal access to all information, and that superintendent does not initiate, support, or become involved with school board interpersonal and professional disagreements.
So the first part of that is already, I communicate to everyone equally in terms of putting things out, both with my, the reports that I give to the whole board and in the committees, and my weekly memo that goes out to all board members. I do have conversations with the board chair, as is typical with the relationship between the superintendent and the board. So I think I'm already doing that. And then on your second part, respectfully, I disagree. I think that it is part of my role to work on board relations and the interworkings of the board members. I believe that is pretty central to my role.
Okay, well, I'll just let you know that it has always been a problem when, and I am a victim of it, so I can speak firsthand,
Mhm.
a victim. That when a superintendent joins forces with certain board members and other board members don't have
Mm.
other information, it becomes highly disruptive, and it affects the school board functioning, which then in turn affects the staff, which then in turn affects the students.
So I hear what you're saying. What I'm suggesting is not that I'm taking sides, but I'm working as a mediator to ensure that the board is working as a team of 10. That's my job. I agree. I don't take sides. I mediate to try to get us working together.
Yeah, we all have to agree to disagree at times.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, somehow if that was put in here, that would be very helpful. Because I will say this, and I'm sorry, Tracy, this is not about you, please. But again, we don't have information on what goes on. I'll choose this as an example, in the Personnel Committee. I was blindsided at the last meeting. And this policy, I think, would really, now, when you do your meetings and things like that, your reports are fabulous. I mean, we have but I'm talking about if you are going to do that role where you're communicating with also the board members are communicating, committees, et cetera,
Mhm.
the
So-
whole board needs to know,
So
right?
specific to the things that you're asking about, all of those, all the information that you're saying you didn't have access to were part of the minutes and were given as reports from the policy, by the policy committee chair or the personnel committee chair during the board meetings.
Not the specifics. I had no idea Tracy Smith, I'm sorry, Tracy Long. Obviously, there was a conversation that, please, I don't want to go into great detail here. I think you see the point, though, that it's somewhere in this policy that it specifies that the superintendent at all times shall ensure that the school board members have equal access to all information.
Again, I hear what you're saying. I'm not sure that that's possible to achieve. I put out information as broadly as I can to all board members as equal as I can. And then from my perspective, there's a board member responsibility to access that information as I put it out. And if there are other venues that I should put out so that all board members can see that information, I'm completely willing to change and adapt to do that.
Well, how should we
I
do it
don't-
so we know what exactly is happening in
I think,
go
Elizabeth,
ahead.
what you're requesting is like things that come through different committees. The committee brings them to the full board and the rest of the board learns about it at the business meetings, at the work sessions. That's exactly what happened. So I don't know why you're thinking you didn't have, there's no equal access. That's the whole point. The committees, a lot of information starts at the committee level,
Mhm.
then the committee brings it to the full board. The full board, the rest of the members that are not committee
Then
members
has to discuss
get
it
it at,
and move forward.
get all that information at the work session. So yes, that was your, probably some information, your first time seeing it. Like, I'm not on facilities. There's a lot of things on, most everything that goes on if I didn't tune in and facilities committee meetings, I see it the first time at the work session.
Right, but the agenda is really, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. So you have a good idea of, and then if you want to pop in or listen, but we can't for two of those meetings, the safety committee. Well, bottom line, I would have deeply appreciated as a school board member, so I would have had a chance to think about it and possibly contact Tracy or contact you or contact President Butch. And I'm just going to use the Tracy Long situation as an example. I mean, I am still feel blindsided by it.
Okay.
And I don't feel that I was the only board member. Was I the only board member? Oh, bottom line, this doesn't matter. I'm going off task, okay? And I'm so sorry. But that's why it should be in the policy. So we do everything possible so that doesn't occur. And I don't believe it's up to the board member to say, okay, I'm calling you to tell me what's going on in the meeting. I don't feel that that is a really sustainable and good idea. So however you decide you want to word it. Okay, I'm leaving it up. It's your ball here.
So, again, I think I hear what you're saying. I think that the way that we have our current operations should address that. And if we need to talk, you and I, about specifics about how to make sure you have access to everything,
all
then-
boards. No, just all board members.
then that's great. But I guess I'd like to hear from the other two committee members about, would you like to see the changes that, and still don't have a clear idea of exactly how that should change, but from the rest of the committee.
I think if there's big changes going on, it'd be a courtesy to let everybody know. And that's all.
And that's
Uh,
part of his communication that he's done.
Right.
So I don't see any problems with this policy. And then through the AR, it'll specifically delineate. what's
Well,
his
sure,
role,
but
what's
that's a
our
good idea,
role.
Tracy. Yeah, at
Oh,
that
okay.
point, put it somewhere in the AR so we can review the ARs for next month.
No, that's not our job.
Well,
Our job is not to
I'm
review
not
the
going to
ARs.
recommend this policy goes anywhere until the ARs are reviewed.
That's not our job. Our job is not, our job is to approve the policy. His job is the ARs. It is not our job to approve his ARs.
No, I realize that.
administration's ARs.
You're
Yeah, because
absolutely
if
correct.
something goes bad with an AR, it's his responsibility to fix it and then come to us. And we have to say yay or nay, whatever. We can't write the ARs for him.
I realize that, I really do. I just want to make sure that, because this, you know, this is a very tricky wick, okay? And I know some people are gonna be very sensitive about it, and some people may not care. But we're looking for long-term sustainability, and I have brought to the table some long-term issues that have caused grave disparity in our school board functioning. And I feel that communication is key. And if the AR, I've said my piece, the AR, in the best interest of the school district as a whole, addresses those issues. Thank
Okay.
you.
We'll just keep moving on with that, and if you can communicate with everybody a little bit on things that are happening, that's fine. Anything else on the policy committee review? All right, let's move on to concussion management. We asked for a guest, we have one. And
I'm so sorry, Chair. Are we gonna table this until the ARs are complete? Or are you taking it to first read?
I think we can go to the first read,
Okay,
I agree.
and I asked
with
that
changes.
we make some changes on it as we discussed, and Dr. Redmond, if you can give us a blurb on the ARs.
Thank you.
With concussion management, we have a guest. What was your name?
Chelsea Green.
Okay, Chelsea Grebe. I did some really deep conversations with some people also. So I'd like to hear what she has to say, and then I'll let you folks know what I learned through this. So go ahead.
So just to introduce myself, my name is Chelsea Grebe. I'm the health assisting instructor here at the CTC. So it was brought to my attention by Dr. Redmond, and first of all, like, thank you. It's nice to kind of be able to provide my input as a registered nurse. So the policy, I think there was some verbiage that we didn't love about the appropriate medical professional. You know, would there need to be something that stated that, you know, family members is a medical professional, not the DC, the doctor of chiropractic, right? Is it an MD, a DO, PA, CRNP for physician's assistant and certified nurse practitioner? So I think some of that verbiage. And then I had done some research with my alumni for their concussion management policy. And then I also have the standing order protocol from UPMC, who our athletic trainer, Lindsay Dry, is affiliated with. So I do think maybe if we have their standing orders in place, which I don't understand the legality of this, I'm just here as a guest.
No, your opinion matters, please.
So I don't know how often these do get reviewed, and I'm sure these standing protocols from UPMC gets reviewed and edited periodically. So it might just cause more work if we do incorporate their protocols within our policy. We might have to update that and make sure and communicate with Lindsay too, or whoever our athletic trainer, you know, might be affiliated, just to kind of keep updating that. So their standing orders and standing protocols, I mean, truly define a brain injury, symptoms of concussion, signs of concussion, and then the athletic trainer's role, which I feel as though our policy doesn't really use athletic trainer much in this, or if at all. So, and I think Lindsay serves a really important role of the communication between, you know, her management of the player, and like she communicates with, if they're not doctoring through UPMC or doctoring through her, she also communicates with their physician or medical professional. And then the only other thing that I had thought was really important was the concussion testing.
Okay.
UPMC utilizes Impact. So it's a computer-based program that they should obtain a baseline. And I think that needs to be clear that all athletes will have baseline testing. That way then, if a concussion brain injury occurs, then they can't return back to play until that score has been reached, their baseline.
That thank you. That is incredibly, as far as I'm concerned, great advice. I definitely would like to hear what other board members, superintendent, athletics director, and also how would that cost, and not that the cost is, to me, the priority here, but something like that, though, that would be, we'd have to all understand when that would take place, and what about the cost? And what if the parent isn't able to get the child? I mean, the concept is fabulous. I mean, it comes with part being, when they do the physical assessment, to have that part of it, but those are the unknowns for me.
As for the cost, speaking to Lindsay, UPMC covers.
It's part of our contract package. Wow, didn't know that. Didn't know
Now-
that.
Part of what Dr. Baldino's issue was, is he didn't like the vague names of some of the individuals. He wanted to see a neurologist. So I contacted, number one, I'm gonna say was my brother, Dr. David Williams-Scaff, who is the lead trauma surgeon with University of Pennsylvania. And he told me, in fact, directly, I let him read our policy. He said he totally 100% agrees. He said, as a person that in the ER deals with multiple concussions every single day, he said neurologist fixes things. The neuropsychology person is the one that does the investigation and okays them to go back to play or go back to normal life. He said that the way it works is neurologist is on scene right then and there. If there's a problem such as my own accident, you had neurologist surgeons all over you working with the spine. He said, but they cannot clear you to go back and play. It has to go through higher up the chain. So he agreed with what he did. And then he sent me a thing from the Cleveland Clinic. And it says the population served clinical neuropsychology serves people across the entire age and developed span where there are concerns about a brain function. It says some of the conditions neuropsychologists routinely deal with include developmental disorders, autism, learning and attention, concussion, and traumatic brain injury. Epilepsy, stroke, and dementia is what they specialize in. And that specifically is written in our policies. And then I contacted Dr. Thomas, who was my neurologist for my accident. And he sent me a thing also from Cleveland Clinic where he did time at. And it says, what conditions do neuropsychologists treat? The main things that they do are some of the autism, Alzheimer's, but concussion management and traumatic brain injuries is their specialty. He said they have to be licensed and completely certified to write off a patient. If we have a student get hurt, we have the right verbiage in our policy. And he said, I would stick with what you have. I did talk to Dr. Baldino about it in length last night. And he said, that's fine. He said, I just don't like the multiple people being able to clear them. And he feels it should be nothing but a neurologist. And I said, well, a neurologist isn't the one to clear him to begin with. And he said, well, He said, I'm just gonna agree. I have my own terms and thoughts, and that was the end of it. So I'm gonna recommend that we get this thing done with and that we move on with the verbiage as it is.
So if I could, Chelsea, you had some ideas about maybe limiting a little bit. I think it's in the definitions under 3. Is that right? Where you and I had spoken a little bit about kind of narrowing or being maybe being more specific about
For the medical professional.
for the medical professionals.
Right, I think there's a big difference between a medical professional that's a doctor of chiropractic medicine versus a medical doctor or a DO, doctor of osteopathic medicine.
Mhm.
And I had conversations with Mount Nittany and Geisinger, and, around here, neuro is near existent, especially for pediatric population. Mount Nittany's neuro team does not even accept pediatric patients. So in order for a student to even get a neuro evaluation, neuropsych evaluation, it could be months.
Oh, Jesus.
Could be
Yes,
forever.
Yes, if we go through Geisinger, students might have to go to Wilkes-Barre, and that's just not feasible.
Yeah.
So I do think if it's, pinpointed that the physician must be an MD or a DO, and that, other licensed professionals could be a PA or a nurse practitioner. We know that's a very common, a common medical professional that we might even see. It's
Mhm.
very rare to get in to see a actual physician, so I think if it might lay it out.
So if we use the more specific or more defined list of people and then include in there, as it does here, who has received specific training in evaluation management of concussions.
Mhm.
So with that, for the committee, what I'd like to do, with your permission, is work with you and get that line really defined so that we're both comfortable with it, and then bring it back to the committee.
And yes, it's lovely. And what about the pre-screening? What about?
That's mandatory for
That's
all.
mandatory.
All student athletes take that.
For the concussion?
I just asked
Yes.
Dave. Yes,
Yeah.
it's mandatory. They do it on the computer before the season starts.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That is fantastic news. That is fantastic.
Yep, he just verified it. I just texted him.
Thank
on
you.
it.
And so is that in like the student athlete handbook or PIAA? Should that be included so it's known that
I-
they do the?
I just have to, I looked at the coach's handbook and it didn't specifically, it said that it meets concussion protocol, meets all the regulations of the NFSHS protocols. And I think it's outlined in there, but I'm gonna get with Dave because we're actually updating the coach's handbook. And it would be best just to, even if it would state it in those protocols and you're just blanket covering it, maybe it's best just to outline it that it's.
So I think we
maybe-
can put that in the AR as well.
Yeah, you could do
The
that, yeah.
AR, I'm looking at it right now, is fairly ambiguous, so that maybe we can
Clean it
work
up.
and have that
Yeah.
in there as part of the, as part of this policy. All student athletes will receive baseline
Yeah.
measurements prior to the start of the season.
Yeah, they
So
can't even
something like that.
Yeah,
participate without it.
it says right here, the superintendent or a designee shall develop
Yep.
administrative regulations, implement the policy, and include protocols for concussion management.
Yeah, so that's in there already, but
Yeah.
that pre-screening or the baseline screening isn't part of it, but I think that we should include it there.
Yeah.
And also, I know this is probably gonna be helpful for some guardians and parents, if they knew what the school district and the athletic department is doing. I'm a board member and I had no idea, which is shameful.
Mhm.
But that might actually help them to feel more comfortable with their child, maybe even taking on a new sport or a different sport.
Randy, is it, do we ask parents, maybe you know this to sign off on the athletic handbook?
So I was looking at the coach's handbook. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at the student-based one with the parents and students get. Cause I'm sure each coach has a list of things that they send home to each of their
So
participants first. So I
we
can
can
talk
very
with
easily
Dave
make
about
sure.
it, cause it may actually already say it in
Sure.
there. Because it is a requirement before any participation.
Yeah,
They
it-
can't even step on the
Under our
field. till they have a preschool.
guidelines here, it says that preseason baseline assessments can aid in evaluation.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
But I'll
so-
talk with Dave.
So we'll do some cleanup on our ARs, and then to your
That's
point,
great.
Elizabeth, we'll make sure that in the communication to the parents, that we say these are some of the things that we do.
Yeah, that's, I think it's a powerful thing. We wouldn't own it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who invited you, by the way?
we did.
We, you did?
No, the whole board did. Remember, we asked for a medical professional. to
Well, I
come
didn't
and
know it was
talk
her
with us.
specifically.
Well,
Well,
yeah, I
good
started,
choice.
because I knew we had some expertise right here in the building, so rather than,
Good
you know,
choice.
going all over the place, I thought, let's honor some of our own employees.
Yeah, I'm glad I never see
Yeah, 'cause
employees, so
for you
hi.
to-
Hi, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
No,
For you to
it's-
get a neurologist in here, never
Right,
happened.
exactly.
Thank
Maybe
you
they
for
it's-
charge
joining
us.
us.
Okay,
Right. Thanks, Chelsea.
any other questions on that, Tracy?
I'm good. Thank you very
Elizabeth?
much.
Super terrific.
Okay, anybody else?
So you're gonna bring that back to the next meeting?
Yes.
Yeah,
Table it for with his.
yeah, we'll
cleanups.
table it till the next meeting and move on with it. The next thing, number 4, policy 706, disposal surplus property equipment, textbooks, supplies and land.
So this is a policy, so as I was speaking with Joni about what's our policy and procedure for removing things from our inventory, she said, well, we definitely get rid of things and we do it in a particular way, but we don't necessarily have that as part of policy. And so my recommendation to the board is that we adopt a specific policy, and there will be an attendant AR with that is specific about how we determine what's surplus and kind of the steps that we go through to remove things from the district inventory.
Where do we get rid of stuff?
Well, depends on what it is. If it doesn't have any value, then we throw it away. Or we auction things. We offer things to the public. We offer things to the charter school. I mean, there's a lot of different ways. It kind of depends on what the thing
Okay.
is.
I was curious about that once I saw this.
Textbooks and things like that, any old library books that we're disposing of, we often offer it to the Women's Resource Center, the
Right.
local prison, some community-based organizations that might be in need. And they often take a lot,
Okay.
just to have, more books in their hands as well, so.
Okay. Any other discussion on that?
Just under delegation of responsibility, it's that one she, he thing. It's the second paragraph, as necessary, she, he. So we just have to change the noun. It's easy, silly. I mean, not silly, it's easy peasy.
Not something that we need to table the.
No, Lord, no.
No.
No, it just, you have some spacing issues and obviously, but was this based on any other school district by chance?
Yes, it was.
Which,
And
which,
I don't remember.
oh, don't worry about
is
it. Don't worry about it.
Wait, was it Williamsburg? I'm not sure.
Don't worry about it.
Williamsport, I mean,
It's fine, as
Might have
long,
been.
that's great if we have some
Yeah,
sort of
Joni did
consistency.
the investigation on that.
Mhm.
As long as we
Great.
have an avenue that we're not building piles.
But,
That's
well,
what we
that's
wanna
one
get
of the
away
things that
from.
we noticed is we have a little too much stuff in storage that we
Yeah,
haven't
for
touched in a
safety
couple of
security.
years.
Right,
So I'd like us to have some more specific rules about how and when we get rid of stuff.
absolutely.
The only
So let's-
question,
We're gonna move that on to first read. No, go ahead, Elizabeth.
last question. Would it be a good place to put this in the policy? So in the future, there's no question? Would any proceeds go back into the general fund or would they go towards athletics or would they go
Yeah,
towards?
It's all general fund.
Okay.
It said in there about it goes to general.
Okay,
fund.
I just want to make sure that that's,
Yeah.
okay. All
Yeah,
right.
that
super
was
sure.
stated. in there. So let's move that on to first read. Next one, policy 800, records retention and destruction.
So on this one, we have, since COVID, as I understand it, started recording board meetings. And through recommendation from PSBA and others, we should define how long we keep recordings of board meetings. And our solicitor recommends getting rid of them as soon as we don't need them, which was kind of ambiguous. And so my recommendation is that we remove old recordings of committee and board meetings after 1 calendar year. So 1 calendar year from the date of the meeting, then we just take it offline. Basically, right now, YouTube allows us to put as much stuff on there as we want,
Right.
but tech is suggesting that may be changing.
Well, I will say this, that especially if someone's interested in a topic, YouTube is so much easier than going through board docs. And also for new board members to learn things, whether or not they're planning on running or they just got into office. Those are critically important visual and audio sets of information. So I personally would say 7 years, because that way you would be in between superintendents or possibly. And also, it wouldn't conflict with board elections. They would still have enough time to look backwards. So I would say 7 years.
But if YouTube is going to stop that, what do we do with
Talk about it again. Or minimum 3 years, but I think 1 year is way too short and it's a disadvantage for those particular reasons. And there might be other reasons.
I'm sorry, I don't know if I was clear about why the solicitor recommended getting rid of things as soon as possible. It basically creates a right to know request liability for the district. So if the longer you keep stuff like that around, it just opens the district for potential liability. And that's the solicitor's reasoning for removing things like this. Why we have records retention policies where we remove things is because it's kind of like a statute of limitations sort of thing. on
Sure.
the policy.
And
So
we're not
that's-
required to keep them.
Yeah, we're not required to keep
We're
these
not
at all.
required to have them or post them at all.
That's right. There's
So-
no state requirement to record our
Mhm.
meetings or to post our meetings or anything like that. It was a choice that the district made as part of COVID, if I.
Probably, yeah, it started at COVID, yeah. So I mean, it's nice that people can look back at the last couple months and see what's happening, but after that,
I think a year is probably substantial. Bill.
Okay, all right.
That's longer than I know that others are doing.
Okay.
So Tracy, if you're all right with that, Elizabeth, if you're all right with that, we can move on.
No, I'm definitely not. If everyone feels that way, I'd be, curious to.
I'm
hear what
not
the
gonna
others-
sit down and go look back for what happened 5 years ago. It's just not gonna.
Oh, I'm not either, but I'm just saying,
Cause you could spend forever.
you get down the rabbit hole. It'd be interesting to see what the other school board members say. So absolutely, I'm fine. Okay, good
Okay.
rationale.
We have nothing under C. Under D, PSBA revisions, policy 903, public comment and board meetings. I have a whole couple of questions on this, and I don't want to drag it out. But does anybody want to go first before I ask questions?
I would just add, just so I can understand this policy, PSBA, is this exactly the way PSBA sent it? Or is this a combination of what we used to have? And then PSBA is in bold, and did PSBA dash the lines out? Or did they put the check marks in? So what am I looking at?
So you're looking at what PSBA sent us and then administrative recommendations. So the line out and the X's, those are the recommendations from administration. But the rest of it, the things that are bold are new from PSBA or changed.
Okay, well, then that makes sense, because some of these I don't agree with. So, okay, go ahead, Mr. Chair.
Okay. On the first page, down towards the bottom, it says the board requires that public comment on agenda items be made at the beginning of the meeting. While I understand that and agree with it, if somebody just wants to ask a question and it's not on the agenda, are they able to do that? And we can respond with, we'll look into it and answer it at the next meeting. Because if somebody has a question and it's not on the agenda, I believe the public should be allowed to ask it.
I agree.
Not that we have to get into a big discussion, but we could say, like you've said, we'll look into it and get back with you.
Yeah, that's all they need is a little respect.
Can we add a little blurb onto that?
Well, that would be, then we would not have a strike through on page 2, paragraph 1. We'll just put an X there. The board shall provide a second public comment period.
Yes.
I wonder if those are two different things. So on the first one, Chris, that you brought up, the board requires a public comment on agenda items to be made at the beginning of each meeting is just saying, the way I read that is that if you're going to make a comment on anything that's on the agenda, you have to do that during the public comment
Right.
time at the beginning of the meeting.
I just didn't want to restrict somebody from
doesn't.
asking.
It doesn't restrict that at all. I don't
Okay.
see any restriction. It's just saying if you're gonna comment on something on one of the agenda items, you do that during the public comment
Right.
time. And then on the strike through, that was basically providing a whole different chunk of time for public comment besides the one at the beginning of the.
Right. See,
beginning
I
of the
think
meeting.
that's important because we could discuss something on an agenda that somebody doesn't understand. And then they want to ask a question about it later. I think we should have a second comment. Just that way, if they don't understand something we're talking about, they at least can ask the question and we can always say we can get back to it later. So I don't know that that should be a strikeout. That's one of the things I have down here.
Yeah, I don't think it should be a strikeout because I think it's our duty. They elect us and it's a challenge we're still working on today is community partnerships and community voice. And I think anything that stifles that is not going towards our goal. And how many public comments do we really have? Now, it could say just during the work session and the board meeting, it doesn't have to, the committees are out, so we don't,
Mhm.
but I just feel out of deep respect in what we're trying to accomplish with the public.
So the way, just for clarity, the way it's written in here, the board shall provide a second public comment period after the items for action or deliberation and so forth, means that for every board meeting, we have to provide one.
That's fine.
Because of the shall. Do you want to leave it a shall? Do you want to make it a may? Do you want to restrict it to work
I'd say
sessions
may.
only?
I'd say May.
So change it to may,
Yeah.
and then do you want it to have that be during work sessions and not during voting meetings?
I think it could go either way because then if we discuss it in the work session, then it come the voting meeting, it's a done deal.
Can I
Please,
ask a question?
please.
Can you just make the public comment section of the board meeting the last action at the board meeting? Because then way you only have one public comment section, you just do it at the end, so they absorb all the information that
I
they
think we
have.
Can do that.
And then you don't need to have two, because if you have two, then it just creates a lot more, I guess, minutia that would go on throughout that meeting. So if you just said you'll reserve the last action item on the board meeting as public comment, that person that would sit there throughout the whole meeting can take the notes on what was discussed and have their 4 minutes at the end to discuss and ask questions.
Potentially what could be a downside is some of our meetings run a bit long. And you may have committee, folks from the community who don't want to wait until 10 o'clock to say their piece.
Yeah, and that does, like when you go to a township supervisors meeting or a city meeting, some of them make you sit through the whole thing, which
Mhm.
that doesn't promote community voice because how many people really want to sit through a meeting? But I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. Conceptually wise, but I definitely at the beginning, and I think at the end, if you leave it as May, we'll give it a shot. But if the public gets really upset, we can just say to them, do you want to erase completely at the end? Or,
It's like we don't have anybody show up anyway.
well, that's what I'm saying, but at least we're showing, I think, an open door. So I definitely would like the community to have an opportunity at the end of the work session. If a new question has come up and if they've sat through the entire meeting and listened, good for them. And we can, I hate to use the word, thank them,
I
but
don't wanna lock the community out because overall they are our boss.
yep, it's bottom line.
But we can't sit here and get into a 45-minute discussion either.
Well, right,
They'll
and
still have their
with
3
limited
minutes.
information at hand.
I think the
Right.
whole point of this, though, is to separate, when they have two of them like that, is to separate the first comment section at the beginning of the meeting on specifically for agenda items.
Right.
So that then we have the input on the agenda before we start discussing it. And then the second one is for things that are not on the agenda.
Right.
And that's And those are the people who probably don't want to sit through this whole meeting.
That's right.
So I think one at the beginning that take out the board requires public comment on agendas. I think that can maybe be rewritten, that, I don't know. I think it was fine as it was, but uh, the second comment, I mean, the second time might just get a little bit redundant for some things, but like you said, not many people come anyway. So I think the whole point was to split it up between agenda items and non-agenda items. But we usually just did both at the beginning and
Well, we could,
just had one
we could
time.
actually do it that, if they have a comment on the agenda, to let us know, and if they just have a regular question, we can advise it. We can get back to it.
We could also just simply, on that first line where it says the board requires public comment on agenda items, we can just get rid of the requires and then on agenda items and just say
Right.
the board allows public comment to be made at the beginning of each meeting.
Yeah.
And just leave it like that. And maybe that
Yeah.
addresses all of that.
Yeah.
Sure. That sounds like a good compromise.
Then down towards the bottom of that same page, says including the group or organization affiliation if applicable, including acknowledgement that the individual's been requested and authorized to speak on behalf of an organization and identification of the organization's connection to the district. Doesn't that pretty much rule out anyone that comes from an organization and wants to talk to us?
It could be a
Even-
baseball
even the
team. It could be.
government?
No. Well, that's why it's struck out there.
Yeah.
I mean, right up above it, the people that, anybody who wishes to comment, says why they're there. And, or in the email, if they email Tracy, the group organization that they're.
Right, well, that's what I mean. It kind of, it hits two different ways. One says they can talk, the other one says they can't. So I'm just asking for clarification.
Yeah, so the one that we have Xed there, all of individuals wishing to comment and so forth, number 4 under there allows for a group or organization. I'm sorry, it asks to talk about where they're coming from. So I don't,
Right.
by Xing out that bottom one, including acknowledgement.
I think it's just making it easier for people. to
Yeah, that's,
speak.
right, and that's when we went through this, up at, right above that says, choose one of the following 2 options or insert your local district. And so we went with that one that was as open as,
Mhm.
the most open of all of those, it seemed to me.
Okay.
Mhm.
On the next page, it said each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 3 minutes. We currently do 4,
Mhm.
and I think at 3 minutes is really cramping somebody to chat. Now, if we have 200 people in here, we limit the whole thing to half an hour anyway. But I think 3 minutes, I've heard a lot of people make comments that you can't get out what you want to say in 3 minutes, just like that woman that was here
Mhm.
that was actually giving us praise.
So you want to see that 4 minutes?
Yeah, yeah.
I'd say
Okay.
4.
Yeah, I don't think we should reduce it from what we have now.
Easy
Do
enough.
what, Tracy?
We shouldn't reduce it from what we have now.
Okay, so let's cross that and leave it at 4 minutes.
Okay.
And then with that said, if somebody's not completely done and it's something of dire interest, I think we should give them the option to finish.
That's always the board chair's option.
Right. On the next page, says where presiding officer's ruling regarding public comment is disputed, it may be overruled by a majority of those school directors present and voting. We had that crossed out. I think if there is a problem, the board should vote on it and fix it right then and there.
I agree. I agree.
I think everything is working as a group of 10, not just one person saying we're done with it. If there is a dispute or a problem, it should be up to the whole board to say, do we continue on or not?
Mhm.
Tracy?
I
or-
agree.
Okay.
Yep.
So let's uncross that one out.
Mhm.
A little further down from that, recording and release of public comment. We're already, that's all crossed out. Shouldn't the recordings be an official record of an open board meeting? Cause we're crossing all that out for the year.
No, well, so. Um,
I'm trying to be as transparent as
yeah, I
possible.
hear you. So in that second block where it says district recording shall not be the official record of an open board meeting, and so forth. If we have the recordings be the official thing, then we have to keep them in perpetuity, 99 years.
99 years.
Mhm. So that's
Okay.
why we wanted to, in the previous policy, we talked about getting rid of things after one calendar year with the minutes then per state law being the official recording of the board activity.
I don't have a problem with that because, I'll be honest with you, I don't think recordings will ever be 100% reliable.
Right.
This person sitting here and then we got 9, 10, 12 eyes reviewing what she's doing. I think that will always be more truthful in the long run, because it's just recordings but I like recordings because they're helpful. And they're great communication tools.
Okay.
But I do, yeah, I don't see recordings as official, me
All right.
personally, but
Then let's go down to board committees. It says public comment at committee meeting shall be at the discretion of each committee. Under the committee rules, you're supposed to have it, except for executive meetings, public.
Where do you see that though? I've never seen it.
Hmm?
No, it's,
I've
the
never-
way it currently reads is it's up to the committee chair to decide whether or not
Right.
to have public comment.
But I'm all for public seeing our committee meetings, except for the executive ones like we do it. And I feel everybody should have a voice.
so do I, very strongly.
Uh,
I'm tired of people calling me about something on facilities or something else. And I would like to say to them, please come to the committee meeting.
yeah, I'd like to say if you have a question, bring it or up there, but it doesn't have to get into a long discussion.
We've also heard from David Lindsay, the fact that our committee meetings are not a quorum of the board. And I've read it right in Robert's rules, questions and answers. If you don't have a quorum of the board, legally, you're not supposed to have a hearing of the public. It's considered a hearing. When you have public comment, it's considered a hearing, and you cannot have a hearing without a quorum of the board.
But does it look like you're hiding things if you're locking the public out?
We're not
I mean,
locking
we
them out.
don't-
They can still sit there and listen. They can still
Right.
email questions. They can still come to the work session and ask their questions in front of the full board. We're
Or,
not locking them out.
or if they have specific questions about specific issues, that should be coming to me anyway.
Right,
So the first time that I hear about something that needs to be addressed by me or by the operational side of the district shouldn't be in a committee meeting. That should come to me outside
No,
of
you're
that
right about,
structure.
no, you're right.
okay, well, that's really all I had on it. I just had a few questions there. Because like you said at one point in time, I'm all about the transparency.
There's transparency, but then there's also getting business done
Well,
and having people give their comments in the appropriate spot, which is in front of the full board.
yeah, because sometimes some of them comments from outside folks can trigger a light for the rest of us to something we didn't think about.
That's happened.
Sometimes some of them things can be good, other times they're not relevant whatsoever.
So I think there's two different things there, right? So a question about something that's happening with the school district, I think to your point, Tracy, can't really be addressed because there's
Yeah, we wouldn't.
because there's not a quorum and we're not having a
Right.
hearing and all that sort of thing. So that separates from, so we're talking about solar in facilities committee. And so we've invited some people to come in and we're going to open this up as a general discussion. That's a little bit different. I think,
Right.
so that second scenario seems to me a good way of inviting and including the public and their ideas in something that we're doing. Separated from, if you have a question or you think that something isn't going right, that should be handled in a different way.
Right. I agree with that.
And so the way that I read this policy addresses more of that second thing about the questions, right? But in terms of how each committee and the committee chair runs things involving people like we did with Chelsea,
Mhm.
that's what we're supposed to, that's the
That's
time
what
when
we're supposed to
that's what
do.
we should be doing.
Okay,
So I see those as two different issues.
all right. Does anybody else have any comments on that?
No, I think it's a really, I think it's
So,
good.
do we need to bring a table it and bring it back and see it after the changes that we did discuss are made? Or should we move it to first read?
I think we can move it to first read with the changes. They.
Okay.
So
Tyler's
Tracy, you have
taken
all the
notes, Tracy.
changes that they.
Yeah, your next meeting isn't until.
Are you caught
August,
up
so-
with us, Tracy?
Yeah, she said she thinks she missed it. So,
Okay. Anything for the good of us?
I have something. Yeah.
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
The last advanced board training with PSBA, they said to, well, luckily we've already adopted the policy 146.1, trauma-informed approach. They spent a lot of time on this. And after I started reading it, we're gonna need some guidance from administration because there's so much to this policy that we adopted and, so you might want to just maybe over the quietness of the summer.
Mhm.
So it's 146.1. I just want to bring that. And then also,
What was your question about that one?
well, they went a lot about it in the training. And there were so many things that it was beyond me at the point. It's like, I don't remember doing that. I don't remember discussing that. So when I read the policy later, that's when I just thought I should bring it to the attention that it was very important to PSBA that we be trained on it. And there's quite a lot of goodies packed into this policy. So,
And I believe that's part of the training requirements for the board is to do the trauma-informed
right,
training that PSBA has put out.
yes, and it's very, very in-depth and, so anyways, just wanted to bring that to your attention. And then they also said, they wanted us to look at 805.1. And maybe the safety committee, I don't know, but they said 805.1. Ours is back from 2020. And I didn't look up whether or not there is a pending one out there. I didn't ask during the webinar training. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Mhm.
805.1 is your safety. Okay,
Correct.
that's it. I just told them I would share that.
All right.
Anybody have anything else? Call for adjournment.
Thank you.
Super terrific. Thank you all.